So I'd like to talk a little bit about preparation for the midterm. And the midterm is to make stacked walls. And I will give you 3 different stacked walls to create. And this is the preparation portion for the midterm. We start by going to the content area and downloading the template. If you already have the template, you can use that, but the midterm, you don't want to use your final project for the midterm because you'll be making modifications to the final project, which are not appropriate. So we're going to say, we don't need to open the file. We just need to download it. Now we'll go back to Revit. And we say new. And the first thing that Revit asks you is, where is your template? Well, we browse for the template. I just put it in the downloads. So we'll go over to the download area of my computer. And there it is. We say OK or open. Now, all we're saying is open up a new project using the template as a background. So all of the information that's on the template will be in the new project. And that's what you want to do, is start with a new project, but using the template as the background. And we say, okay. And Revit starts up, and look at all of the sheets that you have already made. That's from your template. All of the sheets that you've made, all of the plans are already created. Now the information in those plans would be something that we would modify. But we start with this. And let's take a look at this wall. This is a stacked wall. So let's take a look at that stacked wall. We'll edit the type, and we'll edit the structure. And the objective of a stacked wall, which I think is an incredibly great feature of Revit, is that we take many different wall types and we stack them on top of each other. So if you take a look, I've highlighted row 1. That's this wall type. Wall 2, or type 2, is this wall type. And these are the names of them. 3 is that. 4 is that. You can see that they don't contain the same assembly materials. Wall types are different, but now we went back and we're using that same wall type again. And then we have the bond, and then we have the brick ledge, and then we have the basement wall. So we have a stacked wall right here. Each one of those wall types has a height, except for, in this case, I like to use the basement wall as the variable. And what that means is, if you said this wall went from the bottom of the basement wall up to 100 feet, all of these components would always be the same in terms of the height, but the variable will stretch or contract to satisfy your constraints. So we'll just say okay to that for now. We don't want to change that wall type. But let's copy it over. And since this is our midterm, we don't need any of these. We can delete all of them. But we've copied that wall over. Now let's just take a look at that wall. We'll go to that view. We still have some other pieces of our template that we don't need anymore. We can delete those. So I grabbed something incorrectly and moved it or stretched it. So I'm going to just undo that. Revit will put it back. To where it belongs. We have our stacked wall. I'm going to just highlight that. Okay, so let's take a look at this wall now. Its constraints are the base constraint is the bottom of the basement wall, and its top constraint is up to the top of TO second floor wall. So if we took the top of the second floor wall and we change that, let's see if we can change that to 40 feet. I think it's locked in there. Okay, so 40 feet. What happened? All of the other pieces of that wall stayed exactly the same, except for the variable, which stretched in order to satisfy the new constraints, which are the bottom of the basement wall stayed there, but we changed the top constraint. Well, we changed the level of the top constraint. So let's do another change to that wall. Let's say it's the top constraint plus 40 feet. Let's see what happens. So now we need to open up our crop region so we can see the entirety of that wall. But what it did was all of those pieces that we have given heights to in our properties stayed the same. The only thing that stretched was the variable. And in order to satisfy those constraints, in this condition, in this case, one of those wall types had to expand or contract. In this case, it expanded, and the variable is the one that changed. So if we take this wall type and we say go up to the second floor wall, and let's say -5 feet, it will go up to that second floor wall 5 feet lower. What changed? This did. The variable stretched, or now in that case, it contracted in order to maintain that same, to stay within the constraints that we set. So let's start setting up for our midterm. So the first thing I would do is go to any sheet and put your name and maybe we'll change the description to, okay, so that's our midterm. Now that changed on every single sheet. And now what we want to do, of course, we want to save it. So we probably should do save as a project. And I would put that in my, back in my, well, you would put it in a folder that makes sense to you. I have a school folder. So I'll put that in there and I will just call it the midterm. So now midterm 2410, fall 2024. Okay, so now we own this project. It's no longer, well, it never was a template. We used the template as a background. So we installed quite a few components into that file. So the first thing we want to do is we'll go to a floor plan. We're going to make 2 new wall types. Okay, so we're going to put in a wall. We can pick any wall we want. We can pick that one. That's fine. We can't see it. That was the error message. Why? Because the crop region isn't big enough. So let's grab our section and go through that. We're going to duplicate this view, this wall. Basically, we're going to duplicate it and we're going to give it a new name. And to make it simple, we'll just say A. Okay. And we'll copy that wall. And we'll edit the type, duplicate it, and we're going to call it B. Now, we haven't changed any of the components inside of that wall. Nothing has changed. It's just the basic wall. We'll come back and do that later. And now we have two wall types. So we're going to do a very basic stacked wall. If we say architecture wall and we go down to the bottom, we have a bunch of stacked walls. Let's see. These are all stacked walls. Yours, oh yeah, you're working from the template, so it will have it. So we can pick any stacked wall. We'll pick the first one here, and we're going to pay attention to the top, the base constraint we're going to say is what? Bottom of the basement wall. And we'll say the top constraint is up to the second floor, and then we'll just put that wall in. So now we have it. Let's take a look at what we just did. We'll go to that view. I don't need to see the levels right now, so I'm going to type VG for visibility graphics, and I'm going to go to the annotation category and then just type the letter L, which gets me down to the levels, and I'll just say I don't want to see the levels. It's too confusing right now. Here are the two walls that we made. What type is this? This is A, and this is B. So we're going to take this wall, edit the type, duplicate it, and we'll call it stacked wall midterm 1. Okay, maybe we should move that word. Let's see if we can put it over here. Midterm stacked wall 1. Okay. So now we have a new, what is that made up of? We only want two wall types here. We want A and B. So let's look for A and B. It should be here somewhere. And there it is. And the other wall type that we want is B. So let's look for that. There it is. We don't want a third wall type, so we can delete that. And we don't want a fourth wall type. We're now a third wall. We'll delete that. We only want these two walls. Okay. We made wall type B as our variable. That's the one that can stretch. And wall type A is what we've made and called it. Now, let's take a look at the faces should line up. So we want to make sure we set that to finish face exterior. Okay. If we set it to wall center lines, look what happens. The center line of that wall, it should have moved over there. All right. Well, anyway, that's not what we want. We want the finish face exterior. And in the offsets, we don't want an offset. We make that 0, and now these guys line up. But let's see what happens if we pick a wall center line. That's still not working. Finish face exterior, wall center line. Well, of course, the center of those would be the same. So they would line up that way. Anyway, we want the finish face exterior. So we've got two. Now, let's say that for the midterm, I said wall B was the variable, but wall A was 10 feet tall. So let's say it's 10 feet tall. Look what happens. It made this wall 10 feet tall, and it scrunched down this one, or it made this one shorter so that it would still maintain the same characteristics. So we'll say okay and okay. And we've made a stacked wall now. Now, what if I said, let's take, this is wall type B, let's copy that over and call it wall type C. So we edit the type, we duplicate it, and we're going to call it C. And we'll just say okay there. Now, let's go back to our stacked wall, edit the type, and add another one, insert. What? Well, we want to put in C now. And C will become the variable. And so now we have three wall types in there. We have A, which is 10 feet tall. We have, oh, we should change this to B, which is, we could make that 5 feet tall. We can make it any height we want. And A and B will be fixed distances or heights. And wall type C is the variable. That's the one that's going to stretch or contract based upon how tall, and we say this wall should be based upon a base constraint and a top constraint. And that is the beginning of a stacked wall. Now, what if I told you that wall type A was made up of different materials? So we would edit the type, edit the structure, and we have gypsum board and gypsum board. Let's add some other component to that. Okay, so let's say we would insert another component, and let's say that it is, well, let's make it brick. Let's say it's brick. So we click the three little dots, and we can type brick and just look for brick. What do we got? We use the common brick, that's fine. And how thick is it? Well, let's say it's 4 inches thick. All right, so now when we look at that wall, we have brick 4 inches, gypsum wallboard 1/2 inch. We wouldn't necessarily do that. Well, let's change that to air, because normally we'd have some air behind the brick. So we'll just say we would have an airspace. So let's look for air. And let's change that brick to 3.5 inches. Okay, so look at what we have. We have in our in air, brick is probably a finished material, not a structural. Brick is definitely not a structural material. So on the outside face, we see the exterior side to the interior side. So we always, as we work our way down, we're going towards the interior. But the second thing that we have is the airspace. The third thing we have is structure, which I show as air so that there isn't anything there, but we could make that softwood lumber. SOFT, because your wood have studs in there, so we'll say the studs are made of softwood lumber. And there it is. And then the interior finish, this one is, so now we have a wall type A is a new type of wall. And say okay to that. Cannot extend, okay. Row 2 is a problem, it's a finish. Okay, so we'll just change that to a substrate and say okay. Okay, so now wall type A just changed. In our stacked wall, it changed to this. So if we take a look at our stacked wall, we click on our stacked wall, we edit the type, edit the structure, you can see there's wall type A, there's wall type B, and there's wall type C. So what if we said wall type A wasn't 10 feet, but it was 9 feet tall? Then what would happen to this wall? This would become 9 feet tall. This wall would become whatever we said it was, but the bottom wall would be the variable. That's the one that's stretched. So let's see, we can put some dimensions in there just to see what we did here. It's 9 feet tall now. Should be another, I think we made that 5 feet, so we can look around here. And the final one I didn't finish this string, so I just click on that and say, edit the witness line, and we'll go down to the last one and put that in. Okay, so let's take a look at the constraints here. Bottom of the basement wall is the bottom, and the top is up to level second floor. But let's say we want to go up to the second floor, and then we want to go 10 feet taller than that. Look what happens. This wall stays 9 feet. This wall stays 5 feet. The variable is the one that changed. If we change it again, if we changed it to 20 feet taller than the top of the second floor wall, that stays the same. That stays the same. But this is the one that expands. So let's say it's minus 5 feet. Now, what happened? Well, we lost a couple of dimensions there, so let's put them back in. Edit from here to there, let's and to there. Move that over to this side. So this wall in our stacked wall, we said it's 9 feet, so it's always going to be 9 feet. In here, we said this wall type, which is, let's see if we can tag those. Annotate. We can. We tagged them, but we haven't given them a label yet. So well, we'll forget about that. There's one more part to do to make that work. And I haven't set it up for that, so we won't. But anyway, you can see. Now, let's do another part of this. Let's change this so that it's minus 20 feet. Well, let's make it minus 30 feet. And what it's saying here is it's giving us an error message. And so when you see this error message, wall is shorter than the minimum height allowed by this type, it's 10 foot. It's 10 foot 10 and 7/8, and it must be at least 14 feet. What Revit is saying there is that if you added up this component and this component and gave this some sort of a height, it would still not fit in this in these constraints. So sometimes you're going to get that error message, and when you do, it's almost always because you have failed to put an overall height based on the base constraint and the top offset, or the top constraint, that would allow you to fit all of the pieces of this puzzle or this wall type into the wall. So step one in getting ready for your midterm is to take the template, download it if you haven't already, put it someplace where it makes sense that you can access it, start a new project, and tell Revit that you want to start that project with your template from this class, and then simply make 3 different wall types, A, B, and C, and then make a stacked wall by duplicating an existing one and calling it midterm stacked wall, and then change the structure so that it has wall A, B, and C. And you can give it any heights that you want, as long as it will fit within the constraints that you've set up. Bottom of basement wall up to top of second floor wall. That would be the beginning of setting up for the midterm.